We have about data mining and predictive analytics. This is the free consulting segment of our webinar. It's open access to the modeling agency's gurus. However, Scott had a family obligation. He had to leave shortly after his segment, but no worries, because beyond Tony, today we're in great hands with another phenomenal and highly seasoned TMA senior consultant, Sandra Hendren. Thanks for joining us on short notice, Sandra.
How are you? Can you hear me?
You are loud and clear. Outstanding. And Sandra has a wealth of expertise in analytics and healthcare up to the enterprise practice level, and is the author of a new course that will debut in about a month entitled Big Data Rhetoric and Reality. It's a course that will level the hype around big data, and if big data took your lunch money, Sandra's course will show you how to get it back. So we're thrilled to be queuing up that course and have Sandra with us for the Q&A segment. So each question you submit will receive multiple perspectives between Tony, Sandra, and myself. We do have a few questions coming in now. There's room for a few more, even though we've got about 15 minutes remaining. So just enter your questions into the text field of the webinar panel, and I'll read them aloud for myself, Tony, or Sandra to respond. So let's start with a question, a great one from Lori Ann. Must have gotten this perhaps out of our proceedings for the webinar. Why is establishing an internal predictive modeling practice important? Love that question. I'm always tempted to go first, but let me start. I'll throw this over to Tony initially, and then I'll add mine last. I can probably ramble on that one for quite a while, so I'll be greedy on it, and I'm just going to wave on that for now. Tony, what do you think about what are the benefits to going beyond the process level and looking more at the practice level in establishing an internal predictive modeling practice?
Oh, and it is a great question, and the consideration shouldn't be that much in doubt. The value of analytics and delivering that value to the organization relies on establishing a methodology that's common within the organization. We have perspectives from the quantitative side, from the IT side, from the business side. And I think the biggest problem that we often have is those perspectives involve different languages, and people don't know how to talk to each other well. When we develop this common methodology and a common way of approaching the various opportunities that are available to us in an organization and really build a practice and make analytics a part of our day-to-day workflow and work processes, we can deliver huge values directly to the organization, high ROI projects on a very agile development schedule, and just the benefits far outweigh going after individual projects on an ad hoc basis.
Great points, Tony. Sandra, how would you like to expand?
I was lucky enough to work for the man who developed reengineering a number of years ago, and the first day of work with him, he looked at me and he said, "Sandra, here's the way I run my business. Anything that touches the customer or is strategic, we do internally. Everything else is a possibility for outsourcing." And there's my answer. Predictive analytics is having your own internal modeling practice is clearly strategic. It likely touches the customer or tells you how to touch the customer. So it seems like an obvious fit to that axiom that he delivered. In addition, you would be developing an asset internally. Because predictive modeling mostly is about increasing revenue or decreasing costs, you want to be developing the asset that can drive that for you.
Great points. Yep. And I'd say I think you both were onto a great point where it's almost like the difference between having to continue to develop custom cars, and it can become very expensive if you haven't built the factory to standardize how they're built. And that's what TMA actually helps organizations to do, is realize that they're not going to get better results by deepening their bench with data scientists that continue to, as this webinar shows, build more rockets, and very good rockets, but none of them really have a mission plan. And we don't know, what their purpose is. So with a practice, there's a lot of things that are strategically and procedurally considered, and it forces people to think in that way, that once that practice is established, to start with doing a more comprehensive assessment, or you already have the assets of that because the practice is established. You understand what's available in the environment. You understand much more about the resources across the enterprise that are available to analytics. You understand the roles of the players involved, and there's a leader to the team that's not necessarily a data scientist that can interact with all the different roles, all the different team players that Tony had talked about in his segment, to pull them together in a coordinated way. And when this practice stands up and is established, then you have a very purposeful way to arrive at actionable results that can be operationalized, and therein you arrive at residual results, not just getting a lift from a single modeling engagement. It ensures that these results are going to be understood by leadership and adopted by the organization. So those are all benefits of looking beyond the practice or looking beyond the process level and looking at the larger practice level. And it can be done most times, like I said in the introduction, with existing staff. So that's what the modeling agency encourages organizations to do, not continue to hire more data scientists that are difficult to find nonetheless, but to understand how to establish that practice. We reinforce the skills to maintain it and run it. And there's no reason that an organization can't do that most times with their existing staff. So Lorianne, thank you for that question. I hope that fulfills what you were looking for. And again, as we go through, we only have a few questions left. So if you have any that are on your mind at the moment, go ahead and post them. Philip asks, what tools are available for risk-informed decision-making using data analytics? Sandra, let's start with you on this one.
Okay, a lot. I mean, the most basic tool is your everyday histogram and or looking at an outlier, because the most basic way of potentially identifying risk is to look at outliers. I mean, outliers are people or things that tend to behave differently from the norm. So that's your simplest tool. You're all the way up to a very elegant, very advanced tool that I happened to review some months ago, which is a real-time tool that when it processes a sales transaction or a payment or whatever the domain is, when it is processing, at the time of processing, it does what is called a network analysis to see, in the case of claim fraud, insurance claim fraud, to see if this provider or this insurer has a history of referring back and forth to this laboratory, this organization. I mean, that's extremely sophisticated, and everything in between. So it's a very general answer. I'm sorry I can't be more specific, but it was a fairly general question. There are entire practices of fraud, risk and fraud. There are entire tools that are sold for risk and fraud. They're specific to your industry and your specific type of risk and fraud.
Absolutely, and the tools become more apparent when a lot of the effort that's undertaken during the assessment, the combination, as they put in the cross-industry standard process for data mining, the business understanding and data understanding, and the information that's derived from those two start to cycle between them as you gather more insights. That's the foundation that will also start to eliminate a large pool of tools down to a number of final candidates from which you can select. So there's a lot of criteria that needs to be considered upstream, and that's why you hear it from so many consultants. It depends. Well, it truly does. I mean, I don't know how many tools there are for analytics that may be specific to that vertical market, but even if there is, they can't necessarily know how to fit your environment, the nature of your data, the overall situation. And that's why taking this over to Tony, I would imagine there's ways to relate this pretty closely to the auditing example that you had, because what is the definition of risk, and who do you want to go after? How do you want to treat them? There's a lot of strategic questions before considering tools that would need to be examined. Tony, would you like to expand on that?
Yes, I would. And actually, I think that's exactly the right lead-in. And what I would like to point out here is that there are a number of vertical market tools that are available across industries. I have a little bit of experience on the insurance and fraud detection side of things, but you get into a whole different set of vertical market applications and brokerage and trading and the financial institutions and all of the risks that are available there and across industries. Going back to what I was talking about in the presentation, the thing that bothers me about those tools is that they don't take into consideration the individual performance metrics that are specifically of interest to the organization that's going to be utilizing them. They expect the organization to change their performance metrics and how they evaluate to fit the tool, and I think that's upside down. I believe this work needs to be custom for the specific needs of the organization and the project that we're working on. It also looks at, when we go through and set up these projects, we have a training data set with a definition of pattern of ones and zeros that define the behavior of interest that we're going to be looking at. And if what I'm interested in for my organization, as we saw in the auditing example, is different than somebody else's, my models are going to learn to identify the wrong things. I'm not a strong proponent of these vertical market tools. I think we're much better off doing custom development that fits the specific needs of our organization.
Yeah, those are fantastic considerations. Thanks, Tony. And we'll do a final question from Miguel. Is it imperative to have a postgraduate degree in a field incorporating statistics to be able to get a job in predictive? I personally don't have a postgraduate degree. Then again, I don't directly build models, so therein I think it depends upon your role, how you're going to function in predictive analytics. If you will be more of an application developer or a modeling practitioner embedded deeply in the analytics, probably very helpful to have the postgraduate training. Probably would also help having some certification like from Informs, a large analytic consortium, and you may have noticed from our website, our courseware offers Informs CEUs, professional credits. But where analytics, I think, has the greatest need for talent, I don't know that it's really necessary to have a postgraduate degree in another role, and that's, I think some refer to data scientist for this. I don't refer to it because I just don't agree with the scientist part of the label, which is the person who leads the analytic team. And that person, more than having a great depth of analytic experience, they need to have more of that business acumen and really the soft skills. And that's what's truly lacking in the industry. That's what you'll find with every TMA senior consultant. Is that business acumen? Are the soft skills? Is the ability to shift their language based upon who they're engaged with around the team, from the analyst to IT to the subject matter expert to the leadership, and being able to have them all work in concert toward a common purpose. That's what's really lacking in the analytic industry, and what the industry is so hurting for. That skill really comes from those soft skills and the interpersonal skills. I wouldn't necessarily myself be looking for a postgraduate degree for that role. So that's my perspective on postgraduate degree. This time I think we start with Tony what you taught at Kent State. You were working towards your PhD. What do you think advanced degrees in analytics, or even these days, there's Northwestern University and Stanford and others have programs specific to data science and predictive analytics now. Where do you think that gets you, Tony?
Well, and I think as with a number of fields, at the entry level, I think the degree process is an accreditation, if you will, of your capabilities. And I think on an entry level, as in most areas, those are becoming more and more important. I think on the more senior levels, they tend to look at your experience and what you've accomplished throughout your career, and the advanced degrees aren't as much of a requirement. They're looking at what you've actually been able to field and types of projects that you've taken on, and it's consistent with the kind of environment that you're going to be working in, and not so much on the degree process. But I think on an entry level today, yes, from what I'm seeing, organizations are more and more relying on the initial entry level positions to hold degrees.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because after that, it's really what have you accomplished in industry. Phenomenal point. Sandra, well, would you like to wrap it up?
Sure. Let me preface it by saying I have my master's. I'm all but dissertation. I have my master's in statistics, and I have struggled with this question. Here's my observation, and one of the things I do right now is help companies start analytics divisions and help them hire, et cetera. So I do have a fair amount of experiential data in that, as well as having managed large analytic groups. It is clear to me that you need some statistics knowledge. Do you get that through training, an official postgraduate degree, or do you get that through on-the-job training? One of my best analytic people ever did not have a degree in statistics, but she was brilliant because she had done it for a lot of years, and she had good mentoring and good training. So to answer the question, as a true statistician, there's a lot of variability, okay? There are a number of ways of doing a good job in analytics. That's my comment about doing the job. Your question was about getting the job. So now we're talking about
good point.
An HR issue. And I am personally mentoring and helping 2 or 3 people right now who are fabulous in analytics. They've done small jobs for me or whatever, and they can't seem to get an interview. So I'm trying to help them with their resume. I'm trying to help them use the buzzwords that HR people or HR automated systems are looking for. It's not a clear path. It's very confusing. It's very annoying. My bottom line, just to return to where I began, is you do need some statistical training or knowledge, whether you get that through a postgraduate degree or, quite frankly, through TMA. I work with TMA now because I went back to them to renew and refresh my statistical training 3 or 4 years ago, and I was astonished at how good their training is. So you need that skill set however you get it.
Liked it so much you joined us, and we are happy for that.
Yeah, I did. It's the truth.
Terrific. Well, and likewise, exactly. So we are right at the bottom of the half hour, and with that, we better draw this event to a close. I'd certainly like to thank our attendees today for your sustained interest and your active participation, as well as Scott and Tony for your great segments, and of course to Sandra for joining us for the Q&A contributions. We'll follow up with an email shortly with some resources and suggestions that will hopefully be useful to you. And from there, we'll hope you've already offered permission for us to stay in touch through the Modeling Agency's newsletter. If not, you can sign up through the header on any page at our website so that you can stay tuned and consider joining us at a public training event soon. So make sure to register early to secure that the 25% discount rate for the upcoming Toronto production, or move very quickly if you're interested in the Data Analytics for Action and Impact course starting in Washington, D.C. on the 18th. And don't forget that your colleagues can join you anytime for 30% off. Now, if you don't have a training or travel budget but would like the guidance of a seasoned mentor, you might be interested in the Modeling Agency's Escort on Call program. Escort on Call is essentially a retainer account that provides remote open access to a TMA senior consultant. Simply open up an Escort on Call account, and you've instantly added a wealth of experience and capability to your existing bench without expanding payroll, administrating complicated contracts, or taking elevated risk on larger commitments. We'll get you the answers you want, guide you through it, show you how it's done, implement any data mining tasks you may wish to delegate, and then remain on call until the next time you need us. And meanwhile, when we're not actively working, you're not paying a dime. So a link to the Escort on Call description page will be among the resources included in the follow-up email. And on behalf of myself, Scott, Tony, and Sandra, thank you again for attending Data Mining Failure to Launch. Have a very pleasant afternoon and evening, and this brings the webinar broadcast to a close.